All right, I'm going to call to order the school board meeting of August 17th, 2001. 21, yeah, I know, good. So we'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, just for those people who weren't here in June, we're following Robert's Rules of Order, so you might hear strange things like rescind in action or whatever, but that's why. Do we have any amendments to the agenda, Jackie?
Just clarifying that under the COVID response plan, that there will be a discussion of masks. And under the divisive concept law, that includes critical race theory conversation.
Great.
So that's one. We have ratification, voting on ratification of 3 MOUs.
And then
And there's-
that you want to do under old business?
I think that is new business.
Business? Okay.
And that we have additional personnel.
Okay, great. Okay, so we start our meeting with public comment. We have 2 in every meeting. The primary purpose of school board meetings is to conduct the business of the board as it relates to school policies, programs, and operations. The board does encourage residents to attend board meetings so that they can become acquainted with the operation and programs of the school. All official meetings of the board shall be open to the press and public. However, the board reserves right to meet and to adjourn or recess the meeting at any time. The board also reserves the right to enter non-public session at any time in accordance with the provisions RSA 91A:C. In order to assure that persons who wish to appear before the board may be heard, and at the same time it may conduct its meetings properly and efficiently, the board adopts as policy the following procedures and rules pertaining to public participation. Public comment will appear twice on the agenda, once at the beginning and once just after new business. All those wishing to speak shall sign the form provided. The chair will recognize each attendee who wishes to speak. Any individual desiring to speak shall give his or her name, address, and group, if any, which is represented. Public comment will be closed after 10 minutes or whenever there are no further comments, whichever comes first. Presentation should be as brief as possible. Individual presentations should be no longer than 3 to 5 minutes, and written marks are encouraged. Members of the public are welcome to comment on agenda items. Items that do not appear on the agenda may be raised by the public. However, the board will not comment on these as the public has not been properly noticed. When appropriate, the board may place such items on future agenda. Consistent with RSA 91-A(3) policy BEDB and laws pertaining to student and family privacy rights, the board will not place on any matter on a public agenda that is to properly be discussed in non-public. Complaints regarding individual employees, personnel, or students shall be directed to the superintendent in accordance with policies KE and KEB. 7. All speakers are to conduct themselves in a civil manner. The board will not hear personal complaints regarding school personnel nor against any person connected to the school system. The board authorizes its chairperson to terminate remarks of any individual when they do not adhere to the rules established. The school board will not permit members of the public at meetings to participate in the board's discussion of agenda items. The board authorizes its chairperson to recognize members of the public when the chairperson deems necessary. Persons appearing before the board are reminded that members of the board are without authority to act independently as individuals on official matters. Thus, questions can be directed to individual board members, but answers must be deferred pending consideration of the full board. So I would like to make a motion, given the large conversation going on these days. I would like to make a motion to extend public comment to up to 20 minutes, 3 minutes per person, with a priority towards Weare residents. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstained? Okay, so public comment, I'll call up people in the order that they signed up. Residents first. Anyone who doesn't get a chance to speak in that 20 minutes, we'll have time at the end for a second public comment. We do have a timekeeper, and so when she says your time is up, or our time is up, okay? So the first person I have is Rachel Martin.
Hi. Hi, my name is Rachel Martin. I live at 736 River Road, and I'm a resident and taxpayer. That's okay. Here in Weare. I'm also the mom of a little boy who will be attending Center Woods Elementary School. I strongly oppose a mask mandate because the science does not support it. The Journal of Education and Health Promotion looked at 12 randomized control studies, and they found, quote, no confirmed benefit to cloth masks, but something is better than nothing. To me, that is not grounds for a mandate. A study of healthcare workers in more than 1,600 hospitals showed that cloth masks filtered out only 3% of particles, 3%. OSHA regulations permit 5,000 parts per million of CO2 in a workplace environment over an 8-hour period. That's 5,000. So children have been recorded wearing masks with up to 25,000 parts per million. So essentially, if these children were employees of the school system, the school system would be fined and possibly shut down for being a hazardous environment. There are many other credible studies showing a lack of mask efficacy, such as studies published in the National Center for Biotechnology and Information, Cambridge University Press, and Oxford Clinical Infectious Disease, just to name a few. I've linked all of these and 25 more for you in an email. Beyond the fact that to this day there isn't a single scientific data that has ever proven that cloth masks are effective, we are still talking about masking our children. It's anti-science and it's cruel. Children need to see faces. Any child educator or psychologist will tell you that. Do you know the psychological, social, and emotional damage we do to children when you don't allow them to see faces? When we teach them that everyone around them is sick, that the air is toxic? When they're being taught to read but they can't see teachers' mouths enunciating the words? Masks are not harmless. Muzzling children causes dramatic psychological harm, including anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation, as we've seen over the past 18 months. And I don't have time to comment much on the health effects of what sniffing and breathing in the bacteria that comes out of your mouth all day long does for your health. But as you can imagine, it makes whatever bacteria or virus you might be harboring to go deeper into your lungs, causing more serious of an infection than you would have got had you not been breathing in your own excrements all day, and this has been proven. Masks aside, this virus does not affect children. Kids under 25 years old have a 1 in a million chance of dying from COVID. 1 in a million. Our children are more likely to be struck by lightning than to die of COVID. The CDC's own data shows that about 350 children under the age of 18 have died from this virus. In almost every one of those deaths are kids that have had significant underlying conditions like cancer or leukemia. So it doesn't make sense to be masking the children with a device that has shown no efficacy. And don't say it's to keep them safe. They are safe.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Holly Shelley?
Hello, Holly Shelley, 147 High Rock Road. Earlier today, I emailed each of you SAU 19's plans regarding reopening. Although I'll say those plans aren't perfect, I sent it to show that once again, SAU 24 is picking and choosing which DHS guidelines to follow, opting for the most restrictive, just like last year. Last year, I stated before that the back-to-school guidance clearly stated, and I quote, students should wear cloth face coverings in circumstances when physical distancing cannot be maintained, which always allowed them the option to be removed when children were seated and physically distanced. But instead, the district took the most restrictive approach all year and made them mandatory at all times inside, regardless of if children were seated or not. This year, we are starting off the same way, with a blanket plan that only takes into consideration community spread when it comes to masking. Community being county, which is one of the most rural, spaced-out towns in the county, seems to me like a mistake to consider only Hillsborough County's data. Today, we are considered substantial spread, meaning with the plan you currently have in place, our children will start the school year masked up, despite 10 people as of today in Weare having COVID, which is approximately 0.1% of our population. The real problem with this incoming school year is the community you have set forth any plans for has had no input whatsoever with these plans. In the toolkit referenced in the email sent yesterday, time and time again, the words plan for and with community are littered all over the document. Community meaning parents, students, teachers, administrators, and school boards. You did not send out a survey this summer to ask us our opinions. You asked us to participate in a state-level survey of which we saw no results from. I can guess the only voice you have given to teachers is through the union representatives. I know you didn't want to ask our opinions because overwhelmingly we would say we want masks optional in schools. It's likely teachers would say the same. I can imagine some of the severe gaps in employment in this district are a direct result of teachers not wanting to be the mask police or wear them themselves, and they shouldn't have to. In districts in the state that did survey parents, they overwhelmingly agreed that they wanted masks as a parental choice and not a school one. Concord, for example, over 900 parents were surveyed, and more than 75% of those parents either said they want masks to be optional or not required. And that survey's been circulating online and can be easily verified as true. Let's also consider the summer our kids have had. Most have had a relatively normal summer, going maskless into stores, out of state on vacation, amusement parks, around friends and family, and even coming into this very building for whatever daycare program is held here with no masks to be seen. Spending days and months now totally maskless in most or all circumstances. Every parent that I have talked to has said that their kids have had some kind of cold too, likely from being in the world and finally being allowed to commingle and catch things like they always have. We didn't hear any uptick in cases because likely they just kept their kids home and got them better, didn't go to the doctor, didn't get them tested.
Okay, Holly, that's time. Thank you.
Okay.
Brent Dickinson?
Good evening. My name is Brent Dickinson. I live on Dells Way. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. As previously said, there's no science behind this. Under 20, 331 kids have died, all with comorbidities, all of them. Going back to the root causes, why did we react the way we did? Based on faulty tests. CDC, FDA are pulling the tests. They can't differentiate between COVID and the flu. I think what's driving a lot of the policy here in the past year and a half is the teachers union got carte blanche from the CDC. They asked, they received. It's open source information based on Freedom of Information Act. We all use the same pen this evening. What are we going to do now? When I was in the service, every service member receives chemical, biological, radiological training. A gas mask, along with the whole attire that goes with it. Perfect seals, and only 85% effective. Paper masks, cloth masks do not work. It's open source information. Fauci is the leading expert. He's failed. He failed during AZT tests for the AIDS patients, where 17,000 people died on his word. 17,000 before he was relieved of that responsibility. The CDC is wishy-washed. The NIA has wishy-washed. The current CDC director worked directly for Fauci back during the AZT days. There is a credibility issue. Now, going back to being in the service, they taught us how to don the mask, and that's what we heard from our government representatives. Wear the mask, wear the mask. They didn't tell us how to take it off, undonning the mask properly to prevent cross-contamination. We've all done it. It goes in the console of the car. It goes up on the rearview mirror. It's contaminating the fresh lungs we're trying to keep. This doesn't make sense. My daughter has asthma. I'm not concerned about this. My ex-wife is an RN, has been for 20 years. She is not concerned about our daughter in COVID. We are concerned about what the dirty masks do, as was previously spoken. The Spanish flu in 1918, they stopped wearing the mask halfway through that pandemic because it was causing pneumonia. The masks are going to cause more damage. Call your dentists. Ask them their opinion of the mask and what it's doing to the inside of their mouths.
It's time. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you.
Denise Purington, I got a maybe? Sure, thank you.
It's all open source.
Okay, thank you.
Denise Purington, 268 Thorndike Road in Weare. I'm not going to present the science. I'm not going to present recommendations because we can all find the one we want. But I thought it would be good to share just some straight up data, because generally when we make decisions on things for a group of people, we look at how it impacts the majority. So these numbers I took from national sources as of last night. 97.4%, and I always like to look at positive, 97.4% of the world population has not had COVID. 89% of the US population has not had COVID over the last 17 months. This is what the spread of the data. Of the 11% of the US population who've had COVID, 98.3% have recovered. In New Hampshire, 92.4% of the population has not had COVID. 98.7% of those who have had it have recovered. And when you look at the state, I printed out the graph, the state's dashboard. In the past 17 months, if you look at the population of 70-year-olds and above, they make up only 8.7% of the people who have had COVID, but they make up 86% of the percent who have succumbed to it. If you look at 0 to 19-year-olds, 0% of the New Hampshire population has succumbed to COVID. So I just think I present this data, not with an opinion one way or the other, but simply to let's start looking at the real numbers here. And the majority of the population of the world and the country and the state have not had COVID. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let's see, Nicole Fredette, you're a baby? You're all set? Okay, great. Let's see, William Pollitt?
May I wait for the second?
Absolutely, certainly. Thank you. Kenneth, you write like I do, Gold?
Ken Gott, River Road, Weare, New Hampshire. Everybody's riddled with facts and data. We can all get the same information online. And everybody, you go to this room and you ask either side whether you're for masks or against masks, they're both going to say it's common sense. It's common sense. Clearly, it's not that common because everybody has different ideas.
Sure.
So, I'm not going to go over facts and data that I sat there and studied all afternoon. It's pointless. The point is that our children, we should be making decisions for our children. It's up to us as their parents to protect them and safeguard them. And it's our responsibility to do our homework and our research and to share that information with our children and make a decision collectively. I don't think it's anybody's business to be telling any parent. And I understand that there are people out there who are more susceptible and who are at higher risk for COVID. Those people need to take the extra steps to protect themselves. And if it's somebody in their family, take the steps to protect your family. It's not that hard. It's not rocket science. That is common sense. Take the extra steps. Don't make it my responsibility or my child's responsibility to protect you or your family. That's an awful big burden to place on an 8-year-old kid. It's too much. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. How are we doing for time? Natasha, good time? Okay, great. So Marcia Magazier? You're good? Okay. Let's see. So last one would be Amanda Gunther.
Hi there, my name is Amanda Gunter. I live at 199 Concord Stage Road. I'm here representing myself and my husband, Justin. We've lived in Weare for 7 years now. My oldest might be starting kindergarten this year at Center Woods. And I take no pleasure in speaking up today. I don't care for public speaking, but I can't believe that a year and a half into the pandemic, I have to say this, but masks are a minor inconvenience. We have to keep looking, why do we have to keep looking back in hindsight saying we should have done more? Why can't we do more to start? If one child gets seriously ill, we collectively have failed. Our family supports a universal mask mandate at the schools, and it's because we believe in protecting each other. Just because I don't know if I'm going to be able to speak again, we also support critical race theory as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Natasha, time for one more? Are we good? 3 minutes. Okay, let's see who's next on the. Tammy Hagman.
Hi, my name is Tammy Hagman. I live on Holly Hill Farm Road. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody, all the board, for volunteering your time and doing what you do. I know it's been really difficult, and I appreciate all of you, regardless of your opinions. I know that you all truly believe in what you're doing, and I appreciate that. I have been a lifelong resident of Weare. My grandparents lived here. My parents, my brother, sister, and I moved away, and we came back to raise our kids here because of the sense of community. And, you know, it was just a few years ago that everybody was running out to put orange flamingos in their yard for Abby Strong, because she was suffering from cancer. And the whole town got together and really pulled for her. And now we're still going through a pandemic, and I know that the last year has been really hard. I'm not speaking for my own children because they're healthy, and I'm lucky. I'm truly blessed that I can say that. But unfortunately, my next door neighbor and close friend, other close friends of mine who live in town, have children that are not healthy, and they are going to have to come to school, and they are going to go to the elementary school and be exposed to other children. And I'm speaking out on their behalf. We, as a community, should try to support keeping our neighbors' kids healthy. They might not be our children, but we should still care about them. I just think that we should do what's best for the kids and try to keep everybody healthy. I think our individual rights only go as far as making sure that everybody around us is also being taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Okay, let's see. So there is another public comment at the end, so you haven't had a chance to speak, you'll absolutely have that opportunity. The next item is the minutes dated June 15th, 2021. Can I have a motion to accept those minutes?
I actually have a change in that.
Yep, so we'll accept them and then we'll make the
Okay.
amendment. Yeah.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second that
Okay.
motion.
Do we have any corrections, additions? Yes.
In the it talked about that Wendy was taking over for negotiations as lead. It should be lead for the paraprofessionals, and I'm the lead for the professional staff. Because there was a reference to us switching roles, and I just wanted to make sure that was on the record.
Anything else? Anyone else? Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes as noted, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Great. Okay, so the next one is communication. So for the record, I've received multiple emails condemning Michelle's behavior and questions about residency, masks, and critical race theory. They are forwarded to Katie for inclusion to the minutes. Does any other board member have anything that they need to add? No? Okay, please, if you get them, send them to Katie, and she'll include them in the minutes. All right, so under persons scheduled to appear before the board, do we have the PTO tonight? Nope. Okay. So we're getting to the part of the meeting where we're going to have more discussion and debate, and just as a refresher for Robert Rules of Debate, we will need a motion on the floor before we have a discussion. The first person gets to speak is the proposer of said motion, after which each board member wishing to speak has an opportunity. Once everyone who wishes to speak has done so, each person can have a second time if desired, and then we'll end with the proposer. Debate is limited to the motion at hand. Okay. So, committee reports. There's probably not a lot because we're still in the summer technically. Do we have any committee reports on curriculum? No. Community relations, no. Policy, we have one policy we'll revisit later in the meeting. Transportation, probably haven't met. Have you met? Dan? No? Okay. So I do have a couple questions on transportation. I know that the bus schedule was published. There were some questions about individual stops might be missing. Is there a process where they can, people whose stop isn't in there, should they contact the superintendent or the principal? Principal? Okay, great. And then can you give us an update on the bus sharing between Center Woods and John Stark?
So traditionally, the buses have been shared. There was 12 buses shared between Center Woods and John Stark, and the routes would be shared. So the high school students would be on with the elementary students. This past year, due to COVID and cohorting and things of that nature, we split those 12 buses so that 6 were utilized at Center Woods and 6 were utilized at John Stark. And we felt that really worked well with the circumstances that we're in, and also a lot of other benefits as well. And so we are moving forward with that for the 21-22 school year, and we're interested in looking at that into the future.
Great. Anyone else have transportation questions? No? Okay. Let's see, where are we next? Facilities, have you met? No, okay. Kindergarten. This is a big one. Go for it. Go. You got it.
Okay. How much do I say?
Go for it.
Okay. So the kindergarten committee has been meeting over the summer. We've had 4 meetings, including a tour of the elementary school and the middle school. And we think we came up with a great solution that allows Weare to offer full-day kindergarten and save the taxpayers quite a bit of money. Just shy of $60,000 annually. That savings would not be seen to the extent, it would be $30,000 less the first year due to initial startup costs like put furniture for the classroom and supplies. And the things that brought about this change is that the state is now providing full day or full adequacy on the first year of the program, where there was a delay and the state wasn't providing full day adequacy until the second year. Also, the state is mandating that we bus kindergarten, so we have had to add a midday bus run with full day kindergarten. That cost would be taken away, and that's a significant cost. And the third factor is that because of declining enrollment, there is additional space at Centerwood, so our plan would allow for up to 5 full-day kindergarten classes in Centerwoods without displacing any specials, so there would not be any unified arts teachers on a cart, and it would save around $23,000 in the first year and $54,000 in the second and continuing years. So I'm glad that we have a room full of people who are so passionate about education for our children, and hopefully you guys all come out as excited about full-day kindergarten as you are about masks and breathing. What? Oh, and everyone stays at the elementary school. Preschool, first grade, kindergarten, second grade, third grade. No one gets moved to the middle school. So it's like a win-win situation, which we all need right now.
Thank you so much. Let's see, wellness and safety, I assume we don't have any meetings over the summer? Nope. No updates? Okay, great. We are up to administration reports. We are going to start with Miss, what? Negotiations is in a non-meeting, so we won't do it here.
Oh, you don't want to do
No. Whether the negotiations are ongoing.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, okay, great. So let's start with Ms. Potter.
So we've had a very busy summer at Center Woods. Summer programming was wonderful this year. It was great to see the students and that they were able to attend extended learning throughout the summer. We've had a great deal of my time was dealt with hiring. We, unfortunately, like many companies, businesses, and restaurants, we're feeling the impact of staff shortages. Many of our paraprofessionals did not return this year to their position. So we're currently, as of this morning, trying to fill 6 para positions. I should have brought applications and had them at the door. And also today you will find in your packet that there are several teachers who we've successfully moved through the hiring process. And we're very excited because many of them were internal candidates that we kind of, that they grew into that position. Our admin team and leaders have started to draft out our action steps in the strategic plan, which is something you're going to hear about later on in the agenda. We continue to be excited to build and enhance on our work on building strong connections, strong communities, building effective structures and effective processes, and finally enhancing student engagement. More concretely, the paving in our school is 3/4 of the way done. The drainage is working much better. Bark mulch on the playgrounds has been spread, particularly in high-traffic zones. And while I have a great audience here, we will be sending out our pickup patrol letters to parents in the next day or two. I just want to take that opportunity to remind you how important it is to complete that. That's how we send every student home. Other than that, the majority of our time has been on the phone, answering calls, emails, questions that we receive from parents containing to some of our COVID response plans, and I look forward to being able to get back to them after today.
Great. Questions for Jess?
No question. So during the summer school, did the kids have to wear masks?
They did not.
And did any of them catch COVID?
I don't recall that anyone reported that they caught COVID, no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Sean, your turn.
I'd first like to say thank you to our custodial staff who every year does an amazing job at this building. I thank the taxpayers for giving us such a beautiful building to run our school out of. We always have a lot of cleaning that goes on daily, but of course in the summer, carpets, floors, walls, everything. You might have also noticed as you came in some new bark mulch. You probably smelled it. That's our Grateful Garden. So that is the garden that will represent and give honor to folks who have retired after many years of service in our school district. So we're excited to be able to have that opportunity to continue to add to that with plantings. And that was a great deal of work to clean up and create that area. Towards the end of this summer, we did start to have to do some more hiring than we expected. Again, we're in an exciting place, though, that we were able to put some really strong candidates forward that you'll see the names put forward to you and their nomination forms. Along with Jess, we are still looking for some paraeducators. We also, in both our buildings, need a social worker, and we have one 7th grade math position. So here's a little ploy to see if anyone has any leads. We are a great school district to work for, but we still have those openings. A great deal of our summer, though, is really spent on reflecting on what's happened in the past year and trying to improve on things. So we worked on schedules, we worked on staff growth development opportunities, and in all of those times, we're looking to see how we can do that in service to students. Even our schedules are done in service to students. And all of that planning was also to connect to the strategic plan that Jess has alluded to. As we looked at the scheduling, we also, in the spring, were able to send out a Google form and allowed our middle school students to have more voice and choice in their unified arts, which is very exciting. It's just another example of the wonderful collaboration that some of our teachers are really presenting to us. They came to us with that idea. They helped us put the logistics together. Our students will all be required still to have health or PE, one of their rotations during a trimester, and will return to the red, white, and blue rotation, and for any of you who remember those rotations. Along with that, our schedule is going to allow us to return to both flex and E-cubed opportunities. And it's so exciting to see some interdisciplinary units being offered for E-cubed opportunities. So just amazing, wonderful things that are going on in our building. When we, as Jess started with, I'd also like to thank the staff that came into our building this summer. We had some great opportunities for extended school year that was run, a beautiful program for those students. We also had enrichment opportunities that large groups of students came in to enjoy, and wonderful teachers who were supporting that and planning for that. And the last thing we did in this building, directly for student support, was an intensive tutorial week for students who showed some gaps in some of their learning. And that was another beautiful time that the 3 teachers who offered that came together and really discussed the schedule, their strengths, and how they could best meet students' needs. And so those students rotated through those 3 teachers to get that additional support that was able to be offered. Those were our big things for this summer.
Right. Questions for Sean?
I just have the same questions. If the kids had masks and if they caught COVID.
No, we were not at the place in the grid to require a mask, and I have no reports of any COVID positive cases.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Jackie, we're up to the SAU board report.
Okay, and so I am very thankful that although we were busy, we had a little bit more time this summer for that reflection and to think about what worked, what didn't, what we want to take with us moving forward. And that informed our strategic plan. And as I mentioned during the retreat, we spent a lot of time working on that, identifying some goals and how we want to move forward. So the board report I included is really a template for how we're going to be reporting out throughout this year. And so in each of the goal areas, I'll report out on our progress in those areas. And I think that'll allow us to keep that focus. And of course, as things come up throughout the year, I'll add those in.
Let me turn on my button. All right, so the next thing, manifest, going around, reconciliation report.
So this is the preliminary end of year report for 2021. And so after everything we did this year, the current fund balance on the bottom line is $328,700.77. That is bound to change a little bit as we close the books. We're still working through that process. But that is where we sit as of the printing of this report.
Great. Can you repeat that amount one more time, please?
It's $328,777.
Okay, great. Okay, questions? Nope. All right, COVID grant funding update.
All right, that is me as well. In previous updates that we did in this district, we discussed the the supplemental public school response fund and the ESSER 1 funding and what we were utilizing those funds for. A lot of technology, a lot of costs of distancing for software to keep distance at the board meetings and things of that nature. ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, those allocations have been doled out, and we're moving forward with planning on that. The amounts that you see, at least the large amounts that you see there, are earmarked for learning loss. Specifically with ESSER 3, there's a requirement to spend 20% of that on learning loss, and the number that you see there would satisfy that requirement in excess, so it's not exactly 20%. And so we are continuing to do planning on that, on all those funding sources, and we will be submitting a plan for ESSER 3 to the state by August 28th, I believe is the deadline. So we're working through that, and we'll have more updates next time around.
And, that's an initial plan. We'll be updating it because these funds do run over multiple years. There's also a community survey out there seeking input for how we will choose to use those funds.
Questions? Okay. All right, moving on to personnel. So before we get into the sads and the happies, just to everyone listening, we have a dire para shortage. If you're looking for something to do during your school hours, please, 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 we really, really need you. We have a number of resignations and, yeah. I said we have a terrible para shortage. Paraprofessional. Yep. You're welcome. Okay, do I have a motion to accept a number of resignations?
I'll make a motion to accept with regret.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor of accepting the resignations of Laura, Amy, Corey, Stephen, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay. Then on the happy side, we have many nominations. Do I have a motion to accept the nominations as presented?
I'll make a motion to accept as presented.
Great, thank you, Christine. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of accepting the nominations as presented, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Great.
Can I request that we continue the summer practice just through one more month of having one person identified for hiring, so that I can move? We do have a couple of critical openings still available, and I'd like to be able to say that it's an official offer before waiting, rather than waiting until the board meeting.
I'll make a motion to continue it for another month.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor of allowing the chair to sign new hire paperwork until September, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay. All right, so policy. Last year, we added an addendum to our school use around the COVID crisis. So one of the things in here was restricting the use of the school to groups 1, 2, and 3. So I think what I'm hearing from the administration, given that we're sort of more under control, that we'd like to cut that restriction. Is that what we're talking, Jackie? Or the entire COVID crisis section?
I think the limiting of groups and to have it fall under the COVID response plan, so as we...
So remove it from the policy and add it to the plan?
Just the line about which groups.
Okay.
Just to provide some flexibility, because we were able to work with a number of community groups as spread lessened, and it gave some more flexibility in the use of this building and in Sedgwick.
Right. So for those of you who weren't here last year, we restricted the use of the school for school-based activities, community youth organizations, and government nonprofits. And that prevented group athletics and private for-profit groups from using our building. So what we'd like to do is remove that. Do I have a motion to remove that line from the policy?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, do we have any discussion? All in favor of removing the group restriction on policy KF, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay. So now we're up to old business. we have the staff handbook approval. I'm not sure how many of you got to read it. It's pretty long, pretty thorough. Did you have anything you wanted to say to that, or just?
If I may, there was one school board who had requested some verbiage potential. So you did receive a PDF, so that change did not go in. But if I may, I'll just tell you the sentences I'm proposing to add under communication. That teachers must communicate class information at least every 2 weeks. This might include class events, current and upcoming topics of study, and ways that families can support their students.
Great. So I had a silly question. This is for Sean. So there's a section in there about bringing pets to school, and it says small animals. You have the most amazing non-small service animal that comes to this school. So did we need to do a waiver for that, or is because he's a service animal, it's, okay.
There are different sections within the handbook that have to do with animals visiting a classroom.
Okay.
Or animals that are service animals, either a trained service dog that's sort of part of our staff, or an employee who comes with a service animal that's their own private service animal. So there are actually different sections
Gotcha.
that apply to that.
Good. Any more questions regarding the handbook? No. Do I have a motion to accept the staff handbook with the amendment?
I'll move to accept with amendment.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great. Any more discussion? All those in favor of supporting the 2021-2022 staff handbook, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Great. Copier bids.
All right, so the last few months, we've been talking about copiers and printers in our buildings. And since the last meeting, we've done some good work with the bids that came in on moving over our equipment. And we've put forward a bid for Ricoh copiers and printers in all of our buildings, as well as the supplies and service that go along with that. And so what it turns out to be is that Center Woods would be saving about $22,500 over the next 5 years, which is the span of our agreement. And then our middle school would be saving just under $12,000 over that 5 years. And in Rico, from what we did an interview with them, and we felt that the service is really top notch. And so what we're looking for the board, we're asking the board to look at today is a sharing agreement with John Stark on the lease of the equipment.
Excellent. Do we have any questions before we get a motion? Probably should do a motion first. No. Okay, so can I have a motion to go into a sharing agreement on the lease for the copier, saving us a ton of money?
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor of going into the sharing agreement on the lease for the copier, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay. COVID response plan. Just as a reminder, we approved a plan in June, and we said, I think Rochelle asked that we revisit. So I assume we're going to talk about the plan now.
So the plan that I shared with you and shared with the community, we were developing and updating everything, knowing that there was going to be updated guidance on August 11th from DHHS. When that came, we went in and revised our recommendations in our plan. And so what you see really does reflect DHHS guidelines. I think some highlights from the plan. We do not have any hybrid schedule. We expect students are going to be in school, which is wonderful. We are going to work on distancing when it is necessary. So as the impact of COVID becomes more impactful on our schools, we'll increase those restrictions and then pull back. And so the mask piece was a piece I was actually surprised that DHHS weighed in on. And the advice that they gave, the recommendation that they gave, was when a community is in substantial spread, that it is universal masking. Goffstown actually, if I was developing it on my own without guidance, I like what they came up with, but I strongly feel like we should abide by the recommendations of DHHS. Goffstown did not, because that's where the expertise is. And so that's what my recommendations are based on.
Okay, so I expect there's going to be a spirited debate. So let's start with a motion, if someone has a motion around any of that.
I want to make a motion to make masks a parental choice.
Okay, so I would
I'll
like
second.
to. Okay, so I would like to slightly rephrase it, and I'm not going to try to change the intent, I swear. So because we already passed this plan, you need to either rescind the plan or amend the plan with masks is optional based on parents. So which would you prefer?
To amend the plan.
Amend the plan for masks being parents' choice. And we have a second from Daniel. So now discussions, you're the one who presented it, so you can speak first.
Well, like Jackie was saying, that she wants to rely on the DHHS to make the guidelines. It's very clear that nobody knows a child like the parent does, so they should be the only person to make that choice for a child. They can weigh the benefits and the risks for their child that they've raised and make the decision for their own child. The DHHS has never even looked at the children in our school. Okay. They don't know them, they don't know their health, they have no idea who they're making decisions for. And like with the way we have it right now, if community spread is substantial, then masks are mandatory. And right now there's 10 cases and we're in the red for the area for 10 cases. That doesn't make any sense to make children wear masks because 10 adults have COVID right now out of all the people.
Okay.
It makes zero sense.
Does anyone else want to speak?
I'll speak.
Okay.
My concern with following DHHS is simply the fact that if we open school right now, they'll be wearing masks according to the guideline. The risk, I've spent hours and hours and hours looking into the risk for students, and I understand adults have different risks, but we're specifically talking about masking students. If we go with this plan based off of following DHHS, which is a statewide, we're going to end up on a roller coaster, and we're going to have, I'm sure, issues with, well, if we start out with DHHS guidelines, then we're going to have masks. So we're going to have already starting to see people not enroll their kids because parents want the choice of their kids to have a mask or not. And then say we go and it lightens up, then there's some kids might enter, and then it goes back to masks. Well, we could be on this potential roller coaster. As a community in Weare, as school board of Weare, I think we should leave the decision to masks to the parents and to the local community. So this is where we need to do what's best for Weare. We don't have to follow what the state recommends per se. We do have the ability to do what we think is right for the people of Weare. So that's where I'm at with it.
Anyone else?
I'd like to say something. This is really hard. 2 weeks ago, I thought we were going to be back to as normal as we can. I put my faith in Jackie. I think she proved last year, based upon the guidelines. It's such a hard choice because, yes, there are 10 reported cases. But we haven't put kids into a classroom yet. We have seen some schools across the country that have, and they're already quarantined. And ultimately, my number one is safety, but to keep kids in school as much as possible. We do not have concurrent learning. We do not have remote learning. Therefore, if kids are home quarantined, the more kids are home quarantined, they're missing instruction. They're missing the connections with their peers. And that's my focus. I want them to be educated as much as possible. As much as I can't stand these things, I wish they were gone. But in order to make sure that the most kids can be in front of us, I think that's important.
Okay. Anyone else?
I have another thing to say.
Yeah, so
Because
wait
I
a second.
forgot to bring
No,
it up.
I'm sorry. So everyone needs to speak, and then you get to speak the final one. So
Okay.
Right, so I will come back, absolutely. Sarah, do you want to say anything? Nope, you don't have to. Okay.
I'd like to just second the idea that this is really difficult. I think it's a situation that I don't feel like I should be making, as I am not a doctor at DHHS. I'm not you as a parent. I see both sides of the story. I'm a teacher and a parent, and I think that regardless of what happens this evening and of what decision is made, I think as a community, even more so than necessarily wearing masks or putting pink flamingos out, that regardless of the decision that's made here, we need to show our children that the most important thing is that we can be respectful and civil and kind human beings and support a decision that was made by people who didn't necessarily want to make that decision. And so I think that's my comment. Let's all be supportive regardless of the outcome.
So I want to speak that once we passed a motion to follow some guidance. Last year was very painful because we had to redebate this every month, and I think we need some sort of level of guidance to follow to direct this with the experts. And so I'm not in support of this motion. So go ahead, Michelle.
So I think something we can all agree on, whether you're for masks or against masks, is that one thing kids need, regardless of anything else in the world, is stability. That's something they haven't gotten for the past year and a half, no matter how normal you tried to make your life. And so back and forth on this chart of COVID spread is going to be masks one day, no masks the next day, masks 1 week, no masks the next week. But if it's a parental choice, it's going to be the same every single day. They're going to know what to expect that day at school, the next day at school, on whether they're going to have this thing on their face or not. And both principals just made it very clear that they've had students in the building all summer long, and not a single one got COVID.
And so I believe, unless there's anyone else who needs to speak, we can vote. So all in favor of making masks optional, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay?
Nay.
Abstained? I said aye. You said aye? Okay, so here's where we're at. Masks, the vote goes to masks are optional. However, because Rochelle is not currently, she's in the middle of validating her new address, her vote is conditional. So therefore, and I will ask you to leave.
Wendy turned me in because I moved from one house to another.
And if the audience cannot contain themselves, you can be asked to leave. So because of that, when she resolves this issue on September 11th, the vote will carry. At this point, it's a conditional vote, it's even, it has not passed. So September 11th, when the supervisor of the checklist validates her new address, then this counts. All right, so the next
The
is-
town goes back to a meeting September 11th. That's why it has to wait. It's already been verified.
Okay.
Just to put more information out there.
So the next topic is instructional hour calendar versus days calendar.
There was a request, but I can't remember who requested, to look at what instructional hours. So we always have this conversation in June when people are trying to figure out what the last day of school is.
Point of order, please reduce the conversation or go outside. Thank you.
And so what I did was break out the rules and share the rules around instructional hours. So originally, we went to school for 180 days. There were additional days built in for teacher workshops and for snow days. And at some point, somebody dug into, okay, what is the exact hour requirement? And those became instructional hours. And so an elementary school is required 945 hours of instructional time, not to exceed 5.75 hours in any day. And middle school needs 990 hours of instruction, not to exceed 6 hours in any day. So that means there's a little bit of give between 180 and what makes that hours requirement. My question to the board is, what is your goal when setting a calendar, and what are the concerns related to the current calendar? If the concern, as I understand it, is being able to predict that last day of school, because I know there are childcare issues after and people make plans and they, you know, if June 16th is supposed to be the last day of school, they'd really like to get out somewhere around June 16th. I don't think our goal is to have as few school days as possible. So if the goal is being able to predict the end, I think there's a way for me to manage that. What we have learned, after our epic snow day last year, where there definitely was a call for some traditional, we have the day off of school, but balancing that with remote, I think I can manage to get pretty close to that target without shifting entirely to instructional hours. And so what I propose is moving forward, the first weather-related day is that traditional nostalgic snow day. And then after that, I based on the weather conditions, how many snow days we've had, that we use remote days and then maybe have another traditional snow day, but use them to make that end of the year pretty predictable. So that's how I'd like to proceed rather than shifting the whole way we build our calendar.
Sure. And I assume you don't need an action.
Unless you want me to do something else.
Okay. Any question? Concern? Motion? No motion? Okay, great.
Thank you for looking into that.
Sure. Okay, under new business, we want to start with the NHSBA membership dues.
Yes, each year we've been part of the NHSBA. We've had them come and speak to the group. They do new board member training. We use some of their policies. They've been a sounding board for things. I advise continuing your membership.
Yeah, I think certainly this year we got our money's worth, right? There's some training. We have training tomorrow. Do you need a motion for us to continue? So do we have a motion to continue with our NHSBA membership?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion.
Just for anybody who doesn't know what this is, it's a place where we can get information from the state disseminated back down to us. Like, they've been helping us out a lot with the things that are going on legislative. And there's also people that we can speak to if we have questions about things that are going on. So as a new board member, even in a second term, having someone whose job is to know how to do this is very helpful, and it keeps us more on par with what should be happening.
Discussion, or any discussion more? No, okay. All in favor of continuing our relationship with NHSBA, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right. Draft calendar for school board meetings.
That's just the list of the calendar of school board meetings for the rest of the year. We will be working with attorneys to make sure we have our SB2 timelines. So for the budgeting piece, that we have all the necessary, there are statutes that dictate that calendar.
Great. Okay, so legislative update, that's Natasha? Okay.
Hello. So you have a draft in your drive, and I printed out a paper copy for you, of a position statement that was drafted by the leadership team to share with you tonight in reference to some new legislation. In the spring, actually starting last fall, there was a bill in the House referred to as House Bill 544, and it was kind of nicknamed Divisive Concepts throughout the legislative term. It was tabled in the late part of the legislative session, and then it was revised and reappeared in HB 2, which was the trailer bill after the omnibus budget bill. And so what I'm here to update you on is the actual language of that law, which is now, because it is passed, it's RSA 193:40, and it is now called the Prohibition on Teaching Discrimination. Concurrent to this legislative session and the discussion around these topics, there's a larger conversation throughout the country around critical race theory. And so in your statement in the second paragraph, there's some information about critical race theory, which is a legal argument that was made in courtrooms and discussed in law classes starting in the 1970s. There is a reference at the end of your document that gives a little more information about critical race theory if you want to kind of dive into it a little bit. But it's important to note that it is not an educational theory, nor is it a curriculum, and CRT is not taught in our school district. This document is an affirmation that we will follow the law in the prohibition of teaching discrimination, the RSA 193:40. Obviously, we follow the law. But given the context and given the larger conversation, it felt like the right time to bring to you a position statement if you choose to move forward with it. The guidance that we've received in relative to this law is from the New Hampshire Department of Education, the New Hampshire Department of Justice, and the Commission for Human Rights. That guidance is actually fairly helpful. It affirms a couple of things and clarifies a few things that are also in this statement, and it's referenced at the bottom as well. It's important to note that this law does not prohibit the discussion of slavery, racism, social justice, or current events. It does simply state that we will not and cannot teach that one group is inherently superior, racist, sexist, or biased towards another. It says that in multiple ways and multiple times. If you read the actual legislation, this statement just summarizes that. It does allow us to engage in civil discourse about difficult ideas and topics. It does allow us to talk about differing viewpoints, and it does allow us to talk about the history and events in our country. So the prohibition against teaching discrimination applies to all courses, clubs, extracurricular activities, and employment trainings. Although the law does impact teacher free speech in the context of our classrooms and what we teach, it does not impact student free speech. Student free speech continues to be regulated by Supreme Court case law, which is often referred to as the disruption standard. So free speech of students is allowed up until the point where it is disruptive to school operations. The recent cheerleader case does not change that. If anything, what it changes is the reach of school districts to monitor free speech outside of school.
But again, it's important to note that free speech of students is not curtailed in this, however, free speech of teachers is. We will provide training to our staff in the opening days of school so that they understand there is a lot of concern among teachers that they will not be able to teach the important events in our history and the important topics that need to be discussed in order for us to meet some of our other legislative mandates. We have legislative mandates that tell us that we have to teach about Holocaust and genocide once between kindergarten and sixth grade. We don't teach that in kindergarten. And once again after sixth grade. We have legislative mandates that tell us that we need to teach character and citizenship. We have other legislative mandates that we must develop and coordinate a written district anti-discrimination plan. So there are some competing factors here, but it is not up for debate as to whether or not we will follow the prohibition on teaching discrimination. We will follow that law, and just the statement affirms as well that we do not teach critical race theory in the Weare School District. So if this statement is, what's the word? If you're, yeah,
So let's
if it's
start with-
representative of your beliefs and opinions, we would be seeking a motion for you to adopt it. Obviously, if there's edits or changes that you'd like to make and you'd like to bring us to bring it back next month, we can do that as well.
So do I have a motion to approve the position statement?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, do we have any discussion around this statement? Okay, all in favor of approving the position statement as drafted, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained. Great. So it passes. All right, so the next one is state budget.
That is just an update that they are doing adequacy based on October 2019 numbers. And so our adequacy, and Chris, add to this if you want to, our adequacy numbers are going to be different. We're actually, there is going to be money going back to the town as that gets recalculated and the tax rate gets set.
Yeah, so we currently have initial numbers on what the adequacy now looks like as the funding has raised. Unfortunately, I don't have the exact Weare School District number because they haven't provided us yet the John Stark split, and so I look to bring that into the most likely the September board meeting, assuming I get those numbers in time, which, as Jackie said, it will affect our projections for the tax rate that we did during the budget process positively.
Good. Okay. You added MOU, so my question for you, there's some conflicting things with what we voted on tonight in the MOU, so do you still want to present the MOU, or do you?
I mean, you've reviewed the MOU and I guess need to decide what you'd like to do about it. The first one, I think, is about incentives, the para incentives, so I don't think that is at odds at all.
Yeah, so do we have a motion to accept the para
Incentive.
incentive, thank you, MOU?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, good. Daniel, second. Any discussion? All those in favor of?
Can I just mention? I just wanted to put it out there if you don't have it in front of you. What it is because we're having such a para shortage, we're offering an incentive to hopefully get some people, because that's what all businesses are doing around. We had to do the same in order to be able to serve all the children. We need to make sure we're fully staffed.
Good point. All those in favor of accepting the incentive MOU for paras, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained. Okay.
And I would advise holding off on the MOUs for both the other groups.
Agreed. Okay. So, one last statement. The video of Ms. Kelly on July 24th has been widely viewed. Her language and behavior is not in keeping with appropriate conduct of a school board member. In New Hampshire, there is no recall provisions for school board members, and the board has no authority to remove a fellow businessman unless she breaches her oath of office. While reprehensible, the behaviors do not violate the oath. A censure is the expression of the Weare School Board's formal disapproval of Ms. Kelly's action. I make a motion to censure Rochelle Kelly for the actions of July 24th incident with the police. Do I have a second? Do you want me to say it again? Yes. The video of Ms. Kelly on July 24th has been widely viewed. Her language and behavior is not in keeping with appropriate conduct of a school board member. In New Hampshire, there is no recall provisions for a school board member, and the board has no authority to remove a fellow board member unless she breaches her oath of office. While reprehensible, the behaviors displayed do not violate that oath. A censure is the expression of the Weare School Board's formal disapproval of Ms. Kelly's actions. I make a motion to censure Rochelle Kelly for actions of the July 24th incident with the police. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Discussion. Say what? No, sorry, discussion.
Oh.
No. Okay. All in favor of censuring Rochelle Kelly, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Okay. We are up to the second public comment. We had some people skip, so let me go back to them. It's the only way we can make a notion that homophobic statements to police officers is not an acceptable school board thing. It doesn't do anything. You're still here. Okay, so Nicole, did you talk? No, okay. William Pollitt.
My name is William Pollitt. I live at 571 Concord Stage Road, and I'm representing myself. First, I want to thank all the people involved for the clarification of the divisive concept / critical race theory position. Critical race theory, I dare say, is not a person in this room, including myself, who has read the foundational documents. It's little understood, and it's really not appropriate for a public school at this level to even be discussing. I hope that phrase just disappears from our vocabulary forever. I would like to speak a little bit about masks. The people who oppose masks quote statistics, and you can find the statistics you like, you can find the statistics you dislike. I'll only say, since the motion has already been carried, this will have no weight other than to express an opinion. I'm old enough to remember houses with quarantine signs nailed to them because of measles and scarlet fever. I would also remind people that smallpox really afflicted only a very small minority of people and killed even fewer than that. Yet every child was required to have a smallpox vaccination in order to enter a public school. We destroyed that disease. We've eliminated it because of a public health mandate. I remember polio epidemics. I had one friend, fortunately, I'm grateful, only one friend who was ever afflicted with polio. But I remember the panic when summer came and public places were places of fear, not enjoyment, because who's going to be sick? Who will come down with it? Who's going to end up in an iron lung? And finally, I'd remind the masked opponents that I don't wear this mask to protect me. If you think back to the initial guidelines, the beginning of 2020, the mask is not to protect yourself. It is to protect the people around you. And the fact that you don't wear one expresses your lack of respect for the rest of us who do care about your well-being. And finally, I have to say, am I out of time yet? It's not that important. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much. She spoke. Let's see. Dave Dearborn? All set? Okay. Don Dearborn? Good. Okay. Christina Landy?
Christian LaValle?
Christian, that's it. Thank you.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, I know. You're right, like I do.
Is this working louder?
Nope, it's good.
My child attends Center Woods Elementary School. My wife works as a paraeducator as well. I'm very concerned that if we don't require masks, kids and staff will be quarantined every other week. As parents, it's not possible to be able to work and support this level of at-home learning. The transmission rates are extremely high over the past couple weeks. The Delta variant is surging throughout the country, causing thousands of kids to be quarantined in school districts that have not required mask wearing. Allowing masks to be optional will only increase the number of cases we have in our community. Unfortunately for the children, the only thing they have to protect themselves and others is wearing a mask. I was very skeptical, excuse me. I was very skeptical that the school would be able to prevent COVID spread within the past school year. Against my own judgment, the SAU did a wonderful job in preventing the spread of COVID and allowed children to be taught in person. This year, there will be even more kids in the school, and now is not the time to loosen the guidelines, but to embrace what has been very, very successful. Last year, during the school board meeting, many people spoke against these masks, stating that children wearing these will pass out or die of carbon dioxide poisoning. It didn't happen. I am asking the school board to follow the science, embrace CDC guidelines, DHHS guidelines, and let our children have a continuous in-person learning environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Katrina Wagner?
Hi, my name is Katrina Wagner, and I've been a resident here since 2011. I'm representing myself, my 5-year-old son, my husband, and I also was previously a substitute with the SAU 24. I wanted to touch, I know that we're not going to be teaching critical race theory in schools, as you guys stated, but I don't agree with any divisiveness being taught in schools as far as any groups of oppressors or oppressed. I feel like masks in general have created a lot of divisiveness in our schools and create a lot of animosity between children, parents, and community. I think that masks should be a parental decision. Things that we have eradicated, such as polio and measles, do not have reservoirs in animals, just like the flu and COVID-19 does. COVID-19 is here to stay. The science is there. We can all look at that stuff. When you become a teacher or you work in the school system, you get trained on suicide awareness in children. Children are way more likely to commit suicide than adults are. This is because children do not have impulse control. Psychologically, we don't get impulse control until we're in our 20s. COVID-19 is not the only health concern that we need to be concerned about with our children. We need to be concerned about their mental health and their physical health, and this decision should be left up to the parents. We as a community can come together to protect the kids that need to be protected, such with N95 masks, maybe changing programs. We have IEPs to help children with disabilities to learn in the way that they need to learn. There's no reason that we cannot come up with a system after a year and a half to create a safe environment for the kids that have immune or family that has immune problems to learn safely, remotely, and in school. And that's really all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, Stacy Pollard.
Hi, my name is Stacy Pollard. I live at 40 Weare Road. I just had a few statements. I hope that this year, if we do get pulled back into the kids being at home learning, that the things that trickled between high school and the kids staying home at different times as far as the high school not going, if there's an outbreak at the elementary school, did not make sense in so many ways, as far as having one kid having to watch the other child. Also, Jacqueline, I'd like to know if you've looked into some of the paras and some of the custodial department and the reason over the past years why they've left within some of the school systems, not just over the last 18 months. I think if you follow the trail to that, you may see there's more reasons to that. That's all I really have to say.
Great, thank you. Christine Nels?
Hello, Christine Nace, 195 Concord Stage Road. And I know that the things that I was going to speak about are done. I guess I want to give a little perspective. I agree that the SAU 24 did wonderful. I work at school in Henniker. It was no big deal. Kids put on masks like they put on sneakers. They could change from day to day if they needed to. We asked them some days to put on hat and gloves, and the next day they don't have to wear them because it's 60 degrees. Kids are very adaptable. They figured it out, and it worked really well. And our school had very few days that we had to be remote. We did a really nice job. So thank you all for your work and your support. And I'm going to wear my mask because I'm going to make sure I take care of those kids, and then I can stay in school.
Thank you. Okay, Mary McNally. No, Mary McNally? She up? Okay, Francis Plunkett? You all set? Great. Angela Doherty? Okay. And Jeff Anderson? I didn't see you there. There you are.
Thank you. It's Jeff Anderson. I'm on Gordon Lane, Weare, New Hampshire. A couple different things I want to hit on. One for kindergarten. The kind of concern I have is that a lot of times we only look at a little bit of the data. Overall, I drive by Weare, like various different parts of town, and I see buildings going up, houses going up, quote, on estates, duck pond estates. Yes, the population that's in the schools may be going down temporarily, but I think that's a, relatively speaking, short-term spike, and it's going to go up. So I think we have to be fully transparent with the taxpayers and saying, hey, what happens when the population goes up? What will it cost? The other thing about it is, as far as cost, I go by the old theory of fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. How many times has the state promised us money and then taken it back? I think the most recent one, if I'm not mistaken, is pension for the teachers and our share of the money. So to say that the state's going to pay for it when they're like Lucy and they take the football away from Charlie Brown over and over and over again, how many times are we going to believe it? You know, I think that has to be brought up to the taxpayers as well. Not to say I'm against kindergarten, but I think we should be fully transparent with kindergarten. As far as the whole COVID, obviously there's battles on both sides, but we got money from the state or federal government. Did we do anything as far as buying like UV filters so that our air intake system before it goes out to the various classrooms are cleaned, whether it's just COVID virus or rhinovirus or whatever? Because I think both sides of the spectrum can say cleaning the air is a good deal, you know, for us. So I don't know if we've done that, but it's something I'd hope we do. Second thing, can you remind me, what was the vote for the critical race theory? How many for, how many against?
I think we all, for critical race theory, we all supported the position statement.
All of you?
I believe so.
Okay. The reason I ask is, how could she support it if her vote doesn't count on the other items? Either her vote counts.
Right. So that's a fair question. So we talked about this in the previous meeting. So all of our votes are conditional, so they get a little asterisk.
Well, that's the only one you said she wasn't conditional on, as a, you know, just out in the crowd. You know, the only one that was conditional that you told us was
Okay,
that one.
that's a fair question. Can I speak to it? So the only reason that mattered was she was the deciding vote. So that means that can't happen until September 11th. Everything else is also conditional, but it doesn't matter because she's not the deciding vote.
Okay,
That's-
well, thanks for clarification,
Sure.
but
Gotcha.
I've never heard before where someone can make a motion, because how can she make a motion if, now, don't get me wrong, I reject what you did.
Sorry, time, sorry.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, let's see, I think that's it for public comment. So, school board member reports, proposal for future agenda, anything new? Go ahead.
I'd like to recommend that we get in touch with NHSBA and talk to Barrett Christina to do a training or to help us facilitate some norm setting for our board, so we can go forward in a good way.
Sounds good. Anyone else? Okay, do we have a non-public? Okay. So next meeting is September 21st at 6 PM. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I will so move. Make a
Do I have a
motion.
second?
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay. You're done.